Hey tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154, where we are on the hunt for the hidden tiger. That is the tier 9 Chinese heavy tank, the WZ-114, and that is part of the Lunar New Year Marathon hunt for the hidden tiger. It's also the second tier 9 premium tank to enter the game. Now what we're looking at here is I guess the preview section of my Wix article. It's where I do most of my tank reviews, rather detailed technical and tactical analysis of the vehicle. So hopefully you're catching this video from that article, but if not, I will link it in the description below. We'll just run through that quickly and then we'll get into some gameplay with WZ-114. We'll start off with, for you impatient folks, there is a too long didn't read section that goes through the pros and cons, which you can go down to the article and have a look at that yourself. We'll talk a bit in detail about the economy of tier 9 premium tanks, and just by way of example, the thing I would say about tier 9 premium tanks is that they are by no means going to replace tier 8 premium tanks in terms of their credit grinding ability. What you get from tier 9 premium tanks is the ability to earn bonds, and that ability to earn bonds without it being credit negative game after game, because the only other way you can grind bonds really is by playing your tier 10 vehicles, which they can be quite expensive to run. Not quite so much with the tier 9s. Now take this example that I punched through of the morning of the 26th of January. We played 8 games, we made 380,000 credits, and we had a total deficit of about 20,000 credits. Now there are a couple of important points for context here. 1, out of 8 games, we'd actually won 7 of them. It's also it was also a World of Tanks demo account, demonstrator. So it was just a bog standard account. There wasn't anything in the depot. It wasn't running premium time. So I guess I think I did the maths on this. If I was running a premium account, I would have made 160,000 credit profit, or about 20k credits per game. But bear in mind, there was a hell of a lot of wins represented in that overall income. But of course, every time that I used a repair kit or a first aid kit, it would cost me credits, and it would impact this total credits figure, because I wouldn't have had this. I wouldn't have had this World of Tanks account with the depot already fully loaded with repair kits. For a more representative sample, and there's something like 20 million credits in it, I might have been able to buy up a heap of them, just for a more representative sample, but I hadn't done that. I think this articulates the point reasonably well, though, that you can be grinding out bonds without it becoming a massive drain on your credits, as you would if you were playing a tier 10 vehicle. And of course, bonds can be used to buy all sorts of nice things. You've got the bond equipment, you've got premium tanks, you can buy directives, or you can hoard your bonds and maybe use them to auction off a chieftain. Who knows? So getting into the details about the tank, it's got 130mm main armament, and it hits for 530 hit points of alpha. That's quite similar to the tier 9 German heavy tank E75. The penetration characteristics are quite similar as well. Has quite a nice muzzle velocity, but a very long reload time. The damage per minute is just under 1700 damage per minute. So it's a vehicle that's absolutely screaming to have a gun rammer mounted to it. Unusually, it's quite an accurate gun, though. You've got a base dispersion of 0.32 meters per 100 meters, and I guess by the time you start running a Brothers in Arms crew and improved ventilation, then you'll actually dial that down to 0.3 meters per 100 meters. Pretty good. The only problem is your dynamic dispersion characteristics are absolutely terrible. It's about 50% worse than every other tier 9 heavy tank. So you add to that, you've got 3.74 seconds of base aim time, and so even though you have a super accurate weapon, it's extremely difficult to actually realize it because you get such a big bloom and it takes so long to dial that shot back in again. So you often find the gun is used in those situations where you're firing at very close range in situations where you can't possibly miss and can't possibly fail to penetrate. It's kind of like they've got this master crafted hunting rifle and then given it a shitty bipod that just wobbles around everywhere, and you just don't end up with a lot of confidence in your shots. But it's just something to bear in mind. A bit of a odd duality of the 130mm main armament on WZ-114. So it does have the role classification of an assault heavy tank. So it's essentially in there to be able to get into the fight. It's there to trade damage. It's supposed to block incoming damage. And when I say trade damage, it might poke out and it might eat a 250 hit point shot, but it'll return a 530 hit point shot in return. So it's all about those mismatched trades. It does have a decent frontal armor profile, and it also has a very healthy hit point pool. In fact, the only other vehicle among tier 9 heavies that has that sort of hit point pool is the Moishin. And as far as frontal armor profile goes, the WZ-114 has a much better frontal armor profile, except for one thing, and that is the cupola. I'll scroll right on down to a couple of screenshots out of Tanks GG. This cupola here has 150mm of armor protecting it, which means even it's something you just have to be existentially cautious about. Even if you're top tiered and you're facing down tier 7s, a Comet with standard ammunition is going to be able to poke you through the cupola. Which means when you're trying to reverse side scrape, doing it on the right hand side of the vehicle can be quite inadvisable, because the enemy is going to see that before you get your gun into the game. It also only has about 60mm of side armor, which means if I had another WZ-114 lined up against it with 311mm of penetration, I could only angle this vehicle at 15 degrees, and any more than that and it's going to start eating penetrating hits. So you have to be super mindful of that when you're trying to bait shots in this vehicle. Oddly, the side of the turret actually has 175mm of armor, so if you're going to bait shots in a side scrape, do give some thought to rotating your turret 30 degrees to either side before reversing out, because you'll find the side of your turret is actually quite bouncy in these situations, depending on what sort of enemy you have downrange. Quite a helpful characteristic of this vehicle is its gun depression. You've got 10 degrees of gun depression to it, and that will take your 300 odd millimeters of armor facing, which on the flat you get 325mm effective armor out of it. That will turn that into a bit more like 350 to 360mm. Granted, there's still a few weak spots in and around under the gun, but your upper frontal plate, it's nominally 140mm. In this situation, it's effectively about 250, 260mm. Here, it's about 460mm. So the frontal plate becomes quite a durable thing. The only problem is I absolutely would not encourage anyone to be using this thing to ride ridges, because if you poke over a ridge, what's the first thing that they're going to see? They're going to see the cupola and they're going to shoot the cupola. Now, unless you... So one of the things you might be able to do there is to use a bit of rubble to maybe poke the tank up, and if you've got a building that you can hide the cupola behind, well, maybe that'll work out a bit better for you. But don't go riding ridges up on that flank of Lakeville, because you'll just get towed up in the cupola every time. The lower frontal plate, it's fairly flat, won't help you too much frontally, but remains quite durable in a forward poke. Obviously be prepared to lose tracks if you play this way, but that's a lot of tank that you can poke out and start baiting with. And then we talked about the reverse side scrape earlier, in that, yeah, don't be afraid to use the side of your turret to actually bait the shots rather than your hull, because your hull, if you're up against an opponent with more than 300 millimeters of penetration, you are experiencing some very shallow poke angles. Something to be a little bit careful of as well, the frontal armor of this vehicle, it chamfers off slightly. These plates are a little bit thinner than the main frontal plate. They're quite bouncy from this angle, but once you get a little bit of angle on the hull, those plates really start to normalize, and enemy vehicles can punch through it. We talk a little bit about the mobility of the vehicle. It's a little bit on the sluggish side, certainly not as much as the Motion, but 30 kilometers per hour forward speed is not great, and you can't help but feel a little bit of anxiety when your reverse speed is 10 kilometers per hour and you're just trying to get away, back off, so you can reload with that excruciatingly long reload. But with that, for all that mobility though, you really don't want to be trying to use turbochargers to try to improve that, because you have to do something about that awful gun handling. And what I've done with my crew, I've put on Brothers in Arms, 6 cents, as you do. We put on Deadeye as a perk originally. I kind of regretted that. I wish I'd gone full snapshot before I considered anything else. We put in smooth ride, we put in clutch braking because its rotational mobility on both the hull and the turret is not great. Intuition skill on the loader, absolutely essential for long reload vehicles. In fact, the way I've got it tuned, I can change out the shell in about 4.6 seconds. And so if you're playing the WZ-114, you're trying to grind for bonds, you're trying to maybe make a few credits along the way, having that intuition perk available to make sure you're using the right shell for the situation at any given point in time is going to be essential. But yes, I did regret in hindsight putting Deadeye on the gunner in lieu of maxing out the snapshot first. In fact, I think I even retrained them quite recently to just prioritize the snapshot, and then put repairs as a in progress skill instead. And the net effect of that was we were able to reduce the dynamic dispersion characteristics, and that's on top of using the vents and vertical stabilizers. We were able to get those dynamic dispersion characteristics down to still worse than the other tier 9 heavy tanks, but certainly I'd say 25% worse instead of sort of 50 to 60% worse as it was when I found the vehicle. And I've just done a quick summary of the sorts of characteristic improvements I was able to make with this particular crew and equipment loadout. And then we get down to the gameplay video, which is just in the process of being recorded right now, so it's obviously not there. But I will put the link to the article below, so you can explore that in a bit more detail. So without further ado, let's get into some gameplay on this vehicle, the Tier 9 Premium Chinese Heavy Tank WZ-114, the subject of the Lunar New Year Marathon Hunt for the Hidden Tiger. Now, we don't have the progressive skin, the special event skin on it. We've just got the bog standard Chinese national camouflage, rental camouflage on it. But I don't think it looks too bad. I quite like this, the more Puritan look of a camouflaged heavy tank. We've elected not to do anything too fancy. We're just going to sort of push into this area where we can hopefully get into some close range firefights, and that god-awful dynamic dispersion can be kept to a minimum. Notice a couple of our friendly heavy vehicles have charged into the bowl here. That's also a very effective move, particularly if you can get 3 in there and you outnumber an enemy and you're playing something with some hull down ability like the WZ-114 that they've got in there. But we haven't done that. We've gone this direction. We're backed up by an E100, a Jagdpanzer E100, and a Panzer 7. Some of whom are also of the assault specialisation. So it seems to be the right place to go for the role of the vehicle. Thus far, we've seen the WZ-114A. We've got the Object 277. There's also an AE Phase 1. The AE Phase 1 making quite good use of its gun depression and hull down ability. Although E100 certainly finds its mark on that vehicle. We're having a little bit of trouble here navigating around the Jagdpanzer E100. I guess we wanted to give right of way to the big gun, but unfortunately we found ourselves jostling for position a little bit. We were able to get an opportunity to use the 130mm armor for what it's good for, and that's these close range engagements where you have decent penetration, you've got no chance of missing. Put a nice meaty hit into the T10. So we're trying to give the Jagdpanzer E100 right of way here. Always better to give priority to the bigger guns. We see Object 268 version 4 has poked around, bit of an ill-considered shot straight to the hardest part of the lower frontal plate. Really should have been going for the rangefinder or the lower frontal plate. But we'll look for that opportunity a little bit later in the game. We also see a Maus has made an appearance. We've also taken our first incoming hit. We tried for the lower frontal plate of Object 268 version 4, still left the shot sitting a little bit too high. Working the angle and facing the Maus. This just as a cautionary note, this is not the best angle to play this vehicle on, because like we discussed earlier, the second I poke out, the first thing that the enemy sees is this cupola, and that cupola can be penetrated by tier 7 vehicles. So certainly something like a Maus that has 265mm of base penetration is not going to have any trouble at all. Now, having said that, the Maus is insisting on pointing the face of its turret at me, and with that 266mm of base penetration on the armor piercing rounds, we're still going to be able to go through that. Hoping, because of the height of the Maus, and I guess because of our relative height as well, we're hoping it'll make that mistake again, where we can catch a penetrating hit on the lower frontal plate. But it's the Object 268 version 4 that comes out first. It shoots and misses, and we manage to get a shot into its lower frontal plate for our first kill of the game. But noteworthy, that's only our third penetrating hit of the game so far. So a little bit of a slow start for us, and certainly swings and misses like that into just collecting mossy rocks certainly doesn't help matters. Still continuing to work this corner at a really bad angle, and that kind of shows in how the Maus has put a shot through us, and surprise, has put the shot through the weak part of the cupola. Again, a Comet firing standard AP can do that. You don't actually need a Maus to do that. But certainly the Maus has resulted in a much bigger deficit of hit points than a Comet might inflict upon us. We can still kind of sort of see these penetrable parts of the turret of the Maus, but it's the Panzerkampfwagen 7 behind us that's really doing a lot of the work at this point in time. Pushing forward, we're able to get a much better position to play off. And as the AE Phase 1 is working that ridge, we do get opportunity to get a shot up under the barrel. That's where the turret is weakest, and and leave it on a very one-shottable position. In fact, both the A Phase 1 and the Mauser are both in fairly one-shottable positions. We're supported here by the Panzer 7. We're pushing forward. We end up fluffing our movements a little bit on the Panzer, on the Object 268 version 4. Not to worry, we managed to shut down the A Phase 1 for our second kill of the game. Moving forward onto the WZ-114A, we're just letting our shot dial in. Appears to have taken a bit of damage along the way, aiming for the lower frontal plate and knock it out for our third kill of the game, which just leaves the T10 on 9 hit points. Unfortunately, our longer reload lets us down, and the Panzer Kampfwagen 7 ends up taking the final kill. So that's it in a nutshell, folks. The WZ-114, the Tier 9 Chinese premium heavy tank, coming to you through the Lunar New Year Marathon 2022 Hunt for the Hidden Tiger. What a mouthful that was. So for our efforts there, that is a level 2 mastery badge. Didn't get any epic or battle heroes medals this time around, but got a couple of these badges of merit. We got the duelist medal for destroying at least 2 enemy vehicles that cause damage to us, and we also got the spotter medal for enabling allies to cause at least 1,000 hit points of damage in one battle. Having a look at our battle efficiency figures here, we did a little over 2,400 hit points of damage, which if we hadn't been running improved hardening, that would have actually got us a fire for effect medal, but we had been running improved hardening for this particular battle. I later changed the loadout because I decided, no, bugger the hit points. I really just want to get this gun handling under a lot more control than I had it at. So missed out on that one, unfortunately, but we took 3 kills, bounced a little bit of damage. Again, because of the side scraping angles that we took, we were exposing that cupola first and foremost when we poked out. So it's a real no-no in this tank. I can't emphasize that enough. And I guess being front of the pack, we were able to collect a reasonable amount of spotting damage against some of these enemy vehicles, so that all contributed to our experience score, which we ended up with nearly 1,150 experience, so approaching sort of 50% more than the next vehicle behind us. So we're quite happy from that standpoint. One of the things possibly pumping that figure up was hits on the likes of Object 268 version 4, WZ-114A, and actually landing the kills on those tier 10 vehicles. Having a look at the detailed report, again, this was a World of Tanks demonstrator account. It wasn't my own account where I might be running premium account or something like that. So for all our efforts there, we're still only made a fairly small profit of 22,000 credits. We'd only used the repair kit that battle, so if we'd used the first aid kit or a large repair kit, then this figure would have been looking fairly sad. But for our efforts, we've actually earned 7 bonds over the course of this battle, which to be able to do that without running a significant deficit, without a premium account, I guess is one of the key features of Tier 9 premium vehicles. And that's it for WZ-114. We'll still continue to feature this vehicle throughout the course of our stream, so catch us on twitch.tv/PR154. Put the links to that one below as well. And if we do manage to get a better or more representative replay of this vehicle, then we'll be sure to feature that on the channel as well. In the meantime, please catch the Wix article in the links below if you're not catching this video from that Wix article. I promise you it's going to be a hell of a lot more informative about how to approach this vehicle. In the meantime, take care out there.